What's up, Mavs? Welcome to our video on ecology. I'm Joseph.
And I'm David.
And ecology, our concepts are understanding life's connections, populations, community, ecosystem, succession, matter cycling, and energy flow and productivity. What is ecology? The study of interactions among organisms and their environment. It explores patterns from individuals to the biosphere, key levels, population, community, and an ecosystem.
And as you can see, we have some clear examples here of food web, water cycling, the environment, and how ecosystems and communities and populations and individuals work together. The population and ecology. What is a change in a population? How and why populations change in size and structure? Well, some key concepts are density, which is the number per area, dispersion, which is clumped, uniform, and random, growth patterns, which is exponential logistics, and the carrying capacity is actually K, which means the maximum sustainable population. For example, it's wolves
Reintroduced to the Yellowstone and changed the elk's population when elks were too high, so we introduced wolves, and that in order to reduce the elk population back to a stable number.
are. Here we can see clearly some equations necessary for ecology, like the rate of growth, like rate, population growth, exponential growth, and logistics growth. And on the side, we can clearly see the definitions of each letter. Alright, here's now a practice problem.
It says a certain population has experienced exponential growth. The population size is initially 50 and there are 10 births and 4 deaths in 1 year. A. Calculate the per capita growth rate R. Round your answer to the nearest hundreds.
Well, to first start off, we need to know the population size, which is n, which equals
50.
50. Thank you, Joseph. Alright, then we need to do B, which is the birth rate, minus death rate, divided by the population size. That's how we find R. Well, to do that, our birth rate, it gives us in the problems.
So it's 10 minus 4 over 50. And that right there will give us our R.
Which equals to R equals 0.12. And that's our answer. Now, we will have to do next B, which says calculate the overall population growth rate, which is dn divided by dt. Well, that isn't the only way we can actually calculate the population growth rate. Another way is just B minus D, which we had clearly done in the last problem, but we didn't show the step. So here will be 10 minus 4, which will give us 6. That will be our overall population growth. We'll go to the next slide.
Now we have community ecology. Community ecology is the study of interactions between populations of different species. It examines some species richness and abundance, relationships, competition, predatorism, mutualism, community structures, and dynamics. An example, coral reef communities with fish, algae, and invertebrates, they all interact together. Then another example would be invasive species disrupting native communities.
Alright, now we're gonna have the ecosystems ecology, which integrates living or biotic and non-living, which is abiotic components. To focus, we need to know how energy and matter move through systems. Some studies that we could do is primary productivity, decomposition, and trophic interactions like food webs. Some examples actually the wetlands, filtering water, storing carbon. And in the image, we can see how an ecosystem works together to maintain balance.
Like right here, you have the rotting log, and right there is an abiotic factor, and then we can have biotic factors such as bugs or other organisms living in there. All right, and now we have succession. Now, what is primary succession? Primary succession begins on bare rock or in areas with no soil, such as after volcanic eruptions or a glacier retreat. Basically, this is no organisms living there. And then pioneer species are the first species that colonize, and they'll help break down the rocks into soil and secreting acids and accumulating organic material as they die. Soil formation over time, weathering, and organic buildup soil allowing grasses and small plants to grow. Progression. This is a gradual process, meaning it takes a long time to happen by species of larger plants, shrubs, and eventually trees. And this, like I said, takes a long time, such as thousands of years, to build a community that's at its climax, at its peak.
Now, not after primary succession, but another example of succession is secondary succession. The definition or how it works is it occurs after a disturbance like fire, flood, or farming, where soil remains intact, so plants can still grow. This also allows for a faster recovery in the ecosystem. Because soil and seeds nutrients are already present, the ecosystem can recover more quickly than in primary succession. The climax community is the stable, mature ecosystem that results after succession, often characterized by a diverse and balanced community of plants and animals. Some examples of this can be forest regrowth after wildfire, abandoned agriculture, fields returning to a forest. Since it was just a fire, the soil remained intact, meaning that plants were still had roots and were still able to grow, meaning it came back faster.
And a trick to remember this primary succession, you can think about those people that are first there, so nothing is there prior, so they have to start it off from the beginning. And secondary, you could think of they're like after primary succession, and this basically happens because primary succession has had to have happened for secondary succession. And basically, it just resets, but the soil is still good, allowing it to be a quicker process rather than gradual.
Yep. Now we have matter cycling, which is essential elements recycled, like water, carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus. Cycles connect living things and the environment. Some examples is water cycle and CO2 cycle. The water cycle can be shown here in the image. The carbon cycle can be shown here in the image. How carbon from the volcano can either disperse into the atmosphere or underground, and then goes to the ocean.
And here we got energy flow. Energy enters via sunlight captured by producers, which is normally plants, but it isn't only plants. It's also just photosynthesizers. This moves through trophic levels from producers, consumers, to decomposers. And only about 10% of energy is transferred to the next level, as heat uses most of it. Shown on the pyramid right here. And an example of this could be like solar pyramids trying to mimic plant photosynthesis, since it is the most efficient way to capture energy. As you can see right here, from the bottom, we have primary producers capturing energy, then 10% only gets transferred, as in it's 1,000, to the primary consumers, and the same for the secondary consumers, all the way to the tertiary.
This means that 90% of energy is actually lost during every next trophic level higher. And actually, plants only receive 1% of the solar energy they absorb. Alright, now we have primary productivity, which is the rate in which producers convert solar energy into chemical energy. This also determines the energy available to all other organisms. This is the highest in tropical rainforests, marshes, and swamps, but is the lowest in tundra and deserts. The image shows the net primary productivity. The net primary productivity is the difference between the total energy that is fixed by the autotrophs and the energy expensed as their own respiration losses.
And then right here, you can see the solar energy being absorbed by the plants. And then we have an equation right here underneath, which is gross primary production minus respiration, which equals the net primary productivity of the plants. And here are some key takeaways. Ecological connects living things to their environment. Organisms interact with both living and non-living abiotic factors. These interactions when influence survival, reproduction, and ecosystem health. Populations, communities, and ecosystems are dynamic. Populations fluctuate due to births, deaths, immigration, and immigration. Community composition changes through over time, especially during disturbances such as like maybe a hurricane, tornado, or flooding. Then ecosystems respond to environmental changes and can recover through the process like succession. This could be secondary succession or primary succession if it's just starting.
We also have energy flows, which is in matter cycles. Energy enters ecosystems via sunlight by photosynthesizers, which only photosynthesizers only get 1% of solar energy, to remember, and flows through flood webs, decreasing at each trophic level by 90%, so only 10% gets passed. There's also matter, which is carbon, nitrogen, water, and etc. Cycles between living organisms and the environment through biochemical cycles. There's also succession and productivity shape ecosystem structure. Succession, there's primary and secondary, which describes how ecosystems recover and develop after disturbances. There's also productivity, which also has primary and secondary, which measures how much energy is available to support life in an ecosystem. And I hope this part of the key takeaways summarizes and helps you better understand. Alright, now here we have some questions, which how do disturbances like fire benefit ecosystems? Well, fire disturbances can actually help the ecosystem by clearing dead organism or dead organic matter, reduces fuel buildup, and can stimulate new growth. Why is energy transfer between trophic levels inefficient? Well, only 10% gets passed on to the next trophic level, and the higher the trophic level gets, the smaller the population, since there's not enough energy to sustain large populations. How do humans impact matter cycling? Well, we impact it because we actually add a lot of carbon to the atmosphere with burning of natural fuels, deforestation, and etc.
And here we have some misconceptions. One misconception is populations are always at carrying capacity. This is not always true, as populations are actually normally increasing or maybe even decreasing, so they become below carrying capacity. Population growth is always positive and exponential. This is not true, as population growth can actually be negative as in extinction, as animals go extinct, and it doesn't also have to be always exponential. Extinction is not a big problem or issue. Extinction is one of the biggest problems we have, and is a big problem we have to solve, because animals going extinct, imagine one animal goes extinct, it could affect the entire food web, especially if it's near the bottom or the top. All organisms in an ecosystem get along. This is not true, as in there's many predator-prey relationships, and it's not just mutualism. Energy cycles just like matter. This is not true as well, as energy gets lost between every level due to heat, so only 10% is transferred. Individuals can adapt to their environment. This is not true. Individuals cannot adapt. Only populations can adapt and evolve.
By via mutations, which then there's also natural selection and sex selection. All right, thank you for your time.
And thank you for watching.
And I hope this helps you better understand ecology.
And watch out for more videos to come.
All right, bye.